Hey guys, welcome back to the Cult of Film. Wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit. We've done three Exorcist films in a row, and obviously that's it's pretty heavy film there. On top of the fact that we are right now, as of this, in the middle of, and I'm hoping not in the middle, maybe to hope in the end of the current LA fires in January 2025, which have been really horrific and destructive. And so I thought maybe it's time to cleanse the palate a little bit here on the channel and talk about something that's, something that we all need, I think, in general, and certainly what we need now here in the LA area. And that's a little bit of hope, a little bit of brightness, a little bit of light. And I wanted to shift gears, like I said. And as much as I love heavy, dark film like the Exorcist films, and you guys, if you hang around the channel, I like heavy cerebral stuff. I wanted to lighten up the palette and wanted to discuss a film that I've loved since I was a kid. This is, a film that was always either in the VCR, was always on cable, and was sort of a nucleus of my childhood. And that is 1978's Superman the movie, with all of the recent sort of excitement and fanfare around Superman 2025 by James Gunn, which I believe is the first DC superhero feature under the official DC Studios umbrella. I thought it would be really important and kind of fun to revisit what is probably, and certainly in my estimation, the best, purest, most optimistic superhero movie that we've ever had. And it's sort of funny that that I have to actually state that a superhero movie has to it should be optimistic or hopeful. I think it's unfortunate that I would say probably over, with the exception of a lot of the Marvel films, there seems to be this tilt now in superhero fare to go really dark, and I don't think it's worked. It works for the Punisher, it works for Batman, works for Daredevil. Doesn't really work for anybody else. And I think now that Warner Brothers and James Gunn have come to sort of this renewed sense of what DC Universe movies should be, I, for one, am really excited. And I think it's important that we revisit kind of where this thing all started. And that is Richard Donner's 1978 Superman the movie. This was the screenplay was written by Mario Puzo, that you may remember from a couple of films called The Godfather and The Godfather 2. This film really is just a perfect example of genre. I think it is one of the best depictions of Superman ever on film, and I would include the TV serials as well. It's one of, I can think of only two times in Hollywood history where they so nailed the casting for the character that it set the standard for what the casting of the character should be, how the character should be portrayed, how the character should look. That being Christopher Reeve as Superman and then Linda Carter as Wonder Woman. They, the two of them literally looked like they walked off the page of the comics. And what's beautiful about Superman the movie, not only does it have one of the coolest opening credit sequences of any movie, and certainly of any superhero movie, but the sort of whoosh, the names kind of come at you. You also have John Williams' score, which, as someone who has been watching Superman films since he was a kid, you're never going to improve on that. And I'm a big fan of the other films that have come along. I loved Superman Returns. I loved Man of Steel. There's something about John Williams' Superman theme that is it's simply unmatched. And when the Superman 2025 trailer dropped, I was really happy to hear the guitar that was playing John Williams' score. So it wasn't strings, it wasn't orchestral like the original, but they kept the composition and just set it to electric guitar, which I thought was pretty cool. Not to mention, you have in the very beginning of the film, you have Crypto helping Superman, which immediately has shown me that James Gunn and the people involved in DC Studios really get Superman. They get where the DC heroes are. DC heroes overall are much brighter and optimistic than even Marvel characters. Marvel origins tend to be a little darker, a little bit off kilter. The origins of most of the Justice League are optimistic and hopeful and exciting, and aren't necessarily with the exception of Superman, aren't necessarily, and Cyborg, the result of terrible accidents or horrible trauma. And so they seem to have really righted course on the theme and the tone right away, which is great. That is all due to Richard Donner's Superman film from '78. This movie is pure hope. And hope, I think we use that a lot. We use it as a political slogan. We use it a lot in marketing. And I think sometimes it feels like it has lost its meaning. Hope is now a four-letter word. I don't believe that. I'm also, I'm not a very pessimistic guy. I'm pretty optimistic. And that's what Richard Donner's Superman is. Christopher Reeve delivers an incredible performance, not just as Superman, but of course he's playing double duty with the alter ego of Clark Kent. And what he does with this role and the two sides of this superhero coin is just really impressive. Christopher Reeve was a theatrically trained actor. He worked on both sides of the Atlantic in the U.S. as well as the U.K. on the West End. He was a true actor's actor. And so it's fun when someone like that gets these roles. He was also largely unknown at the time. This was 1978 that this film dropped, which means it was filmed in '77. Nobody really knew who he was, and he's holding his own on the screen with the likes of Marlon Brando, who plays Jor-El, who delivers a fantastic performance as well. Marlon Brando is a legend unto himself. And then you have the great Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. And this might be a little bit of an adjustment for some people who are, if you're not familiar with Superman, the film, if you're not familiar with the pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths Superman, this might be a little bit of an adjustment, because prior to 1986, when they kind of rebooted or overhauled Superman, Lex Luthor was sort of this great criminal genius. He wasn't the corporate sort of megalomaniacal CEO that the great John Byrne turned him into in the new Superman comics that accompanied the existing Action Comics and Adventures of Superman comics that were published by DC in the '80s. You had Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was a year-long miniseries that basically reshaped the entire DC universe, eliminated a lot of the multiverse stuff that now is really in vogue and is in almost every superhero film. And they sort of simplified their universe. They didn't do it well. They had a lot of snags and a lot of plot holes and things that didn't quite fit. But regardless, the reboot of Superman, I think they did it right with respect to handing it to John Byrne, who gave us a bit stronger Superman in terms of powers, and he gave us a completely new Lex Luthor, this sort of evil genius who works within, big business, corporate America. And it was maybe one of the most brilliant reboots of any character ever, that new Lex Luthor. So in Superman the movie, that hasn't happened yet, because this is still the '70s. You kind of have DC Comics limping along. It was purchased by Warner Brothers, I believe, in the '70s. They weren't doing great. They were just limping along even through, I think, the early '80s. And so the Lex Luthor you get is the pre-Crisis Lex Luthor, again, beautifully portrayed and performed by Gene Hackman. This is a guy who has great ambitions, is quite smart, and is devilish in many ways, but is also kind of a screw-up. He lives beneath Metropolis. This is not a guy who is in a boardroom. This is not a guy who's a billionaire with a ton of power, but he still possesses that evil genius and is hatching a plan within the movie that Superman, of course, has to stop. That, of course, Lois, played by the great Margot Kidder. This is another performance in this film. The way Margot Kidder portrays sort of this hard-nosed lady reporter of Lois Lane, that also stuck. And that was something that John Byrne pulled into the rebooted Superman in the '80s. And it's kind of been the standard ever since. Lois was not this, oh, what'll I do? Superman, save me. Not at all. She was, of course, in love with Superman, but she was a very, like I said, hard-nosed, tough reporter, and that kind of set the standard. It's rare to get movies. I'm trying to think if there's an example of a movie these days that they so define a character that literally every portrayal that comes after it is a variation or an echo on that performance. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it's a murderer's row of actors. You know, Marlon Brando's only in it for a short time as Jor-El, but of course Christopher Reeve, Gene Hackman, Margot Kidder. I'm trying to remember who plays Perry White. The guy who plays Perry White is fantastic. Let me see here. I've got Jackie Cooper, who no one knows. You probably got to be over 60 or 70 to know who he is. You have Ned Beatty as the sort of dummy henchman to Lex Luthor, and Phyllis Thaxter, who plays Miss Tessmacher, who's, you know, sort of like, I guess, Lex's girlfriend. But this is a really fun movie. There are certain aspects of it that I think some viewers may have trouble with. There's a lot of speeding up camera and things that we may think of as, you could think of as cheesy. I don't. You know, I know how to watch a movie, and I understand this movie was made in the late 70s. But it does give a lightness to it, not comedic effect, but a lightness to the movie. And again, I'll put it up against any other Superman movie made, because they all harken back to this. Like, you don't have any Superman movie that has come out since this first one that doesn't in some way call back to this film. None of it sort of exists on its own. And that's a real testament, I think, to Richard Donner, to Mario Puzo's script, to the performances of all of the actors. It really just, God, they knocked it out of the park. I would even go so far as to say that Superman 2, despite there's one moment in that movie that I can't believe they haven't fixed. You know, I don't know if they even fixed it in the Richard Donner cut, which everyone should see. But Superman 2 is seamless with the first one, despite the fact that they changed directors from Richard Donner to a guy named Richard Lester. It picks up right where Superman 1 ends. We bring in the three villains from Krypton. Superman 2, I think, is probably even better remembered than the first one, because everybody remembers General Zod and his henchmen in their sort of disco-y black leather outfits. God, they look great. I think that I hope they keep those if they bring that back in this new universe. And again, you know, that's Terrence Stamp, Susanna York, Terrence Stamp. Who else? I don't remember who played Ursa, but they sold it too. You know, really just thespian actors all around. I don't think there's a single person in this cast that did not come from stage at some point. I think even Jackie Cooper, who definitely was around in old Hollywood, is a stage actor. The cinematography for this film is also really beautiful. You get these great wide shots of Smallville, which I believe were shot in the plains of Alberta. I'll never understand why they can't actually shoot Kansas in Kansas for Superman movies. I'm not sure why that is, you know, but they tend to go up to Canada, to Alberta or Saskatchewan, and it works. It completely works. You've got these beautiful wide shots of a young sort of teenage Clark Kent talking to his mother. And you have this entire subplot within the film early on about how Clark, Kal-El, deals with the fact that he is unlike any other person on Earth, but he has these incredible powers, and he can't tell anyone. This movie really strikes the balance well with it. I think that Man of Steel was just too angsty for my taste. I respect and love everyone that was a part of that film. I really enjoyed it. The color palette was too muted, and it was way too dark for me, just for me. And again, going back to Superman the movie, 1978, they strike that perfect balance. He's not so angsty. He's someone who just understands what his responsibility is, having these abilities, and it really frames well the upbringing that someone like Kal-El gets. One of the things that I think a lot of people miss about the character of Superman in general is Superman is fundamentally a moral character, and it's very easy to sort of excuse Superman as a sort of rah-rah, jingoistic sort of all-American hero, which he is. He's the best of that. But what's I think a lot of people miss is the fact that Superman is who Superman is, not just because he got the guidance from his father Jor-El in the memory banks of the Fortress of Solitude, and him explaining who he is and where he's from. What really makes the difference is the incredible upbringing he gets from Ma and Pa Kent, the deeply ethical upbringing that he got that says you're incredibly powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility, and you can't ever let your emotions get the better of you. You have to understand that the power you have has the ability to save, protect, or to destroy. And while that's not hyper punctuated in Superman the movie, it is there. And it was something that was even there in Man of Steel. I don't think you can really do a good Superman story without addressing that. And so I do appreciate that quite a bit. It's we're a little bit pessimistic, maybe a bit jaded these days, and we don't seem to think that people can be truly good, and that is simply not true. We spend way too much time on social media and in media in general, and we have to remember that those algorithms bump up that which is shocking, what will get the most views, what will get the most reshares, and that can be it's outrageous content. It's people being rude. It's people being mean. It's people being just awful. But that's not how most people are. And if any of you out there spend time in the real world, like I do, and you interface with people, you know that to be the case. And that's why something like Superman, I don't think is Pollyanna. I don't think it's pie in the sky at all. I know so many really great people, and I think the world could use a rewatch. The entire planet could use a rewatch of Superman the movie. And I like the fact that this new film by James Gunn really seems to echo and understand the ethics, the morality of Superman. What hope really means. Hope isn't just somebody, a messiah figure coming out of the sky and making everything better. But certainly that's obviously part of the story. But it's about love of your fellow human beings. Obviously, none of us are Superman, but we can we can live up to the best and choose to be bright lights. I think, and we should. And again, 3 Exorcist films. I'm like, I really need to clean the palette here, and I think that Superman the movie is just, it's such a gem. Like I said, it is absolutely it set the bar, I think, for the genre of superhero films. I think it set the bar for what a Superman film should be. I think it set the bar for what DC films in general should be. Again, save for, Doom Patrol or Batman, 97% of the DC universe of characters are really optimistic, upbeat, bright, shining characters. And I think people have figured that out, and I'm excited for the new Superman movie. But before you see that, I think it's really important to see the '78 film, because otherwise, I don't know I wonder how much you could appreciate like so much of what we understand of this character, down to the John Williams score. Again, I was so impressed and geeked out that they kept the John Williams score, though set to electric guitar. It was beautiful. One other thing I would mention too, I would say at least the first 3 Superman movies are worth watching. Superman 1 and 2 are real. It's one story. You could literally start one and just roll right into the second, because 2 picks right up where 1 left off. 3 really gets a lot of hate. Here I am. I'm always defending these hated sequels: Exorcist 3 or Exorcist 2, Superman 3. But Superman 3 is probably maybe is the most chock full of so many sci-fi comic book concepts that surround Superman in the comics. They actually cut quite a bit. They were supposed to introduce Mr. Mxyzptlk, I think is how his name is pronounced. There were test shots for the Bizarro character that they ended up cutting. What they ended up with, because Gene Hackman wasn't available to reprise his role as Lex Luthor again, they brought this guy on to play a character named Webster, who's another kind of corporate criminal. Well, at this point, Lex Luthor isn't a corporate sort of criminal yet. So you have this guy, Webster, and let me try to pull this up here. I'm blanking on his name. Robert Vaughn. Robert Vaughn, he was in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. back in the day. Another really incredible actor, just super dignified. Worked, I think, most of his life. I remember he was in a UK show called Hustle, which everybody should watch, about a group of con people. That was so fun. But Superman 3 also co-starred Richard Pryor. And there's people that really have a problem with Richard Pryor being in the film, that it makes it too comedic. I really don't think it does. Again, I watched this as a kid. I've rewatched it since. I really don't understand people's hang up on this film. The final showdown between Superman and Webster has his sister and his girlfriend. It's a really fun film. In fact, I would say it's and I mean this in the best way, Superman 3 is probably the most comic book, but like high science fiction concept comic book style put to film. Superman 3 it's a lot of fun. You get the introduction of the character of Lana Lang, who was one of Clark's love interests in high school, played by Annette O'Toole. Of course, Jackie Cooper is back in this. Margot Kidder. She doesn't have a ton of screen time, but she's there. Yeah, this was another fun one. I don't remember a ton of Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. I know it was a Golden Globus production, which wasn't as high budget as it could have been. I know that by that point, Christopher Reeve was really kind of tired of playing the character, and he was really afraid that playing Superman was going to lock him out of more serious roles. And I encourage everybody to go and see Christopher Reeve's other films, whether it be Death Trap or A Wrinkle in Time, all the other films that he did in the late 70s through the 80s. He did really great work outside of playing Superman. But Superman 4 was the last one. We bring back Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, and he creates a character called Nuclear Man from his own DNA. And it's kind of a throwdown between them. The entire film is really kind of a message film against nuclear weapons and trying to end the nuclear arms race and so on. I don't know if it works. Again, I haven't watched it in a really long time. But the first three I have seen in probably the last 5 years, and they're fun. They're just fun. The first one in particular is a masterpiece and a classic of the genre. It's the way Superman should be done. The other two are sort of just fun add-ons, I think, to that. And that's the thing, is not every movie has to be a masterpiece. I think movies, first and foremost, should be fun. If there's anything I've learned from Quentin Tarantino and Lucio Fulci's, movies can just be fun. Now, granted, Tarantino, everything he does, as far as I'm concerned, is a masterpiece. The guy's an absolute genius. He's one of the best directors that this country has ever birthed, maybe the world. And but again, I think his genius lies in movies should be fun. And Superman 1 through 3 are just fun. But that first one, man, make some time. Make some room for just a fun, bright, hopeful movie in your life. And, if you're able to, and you're here in the LA area where, it's just horrific with these fires, maybe that will take your mind off it. It's like, I can't, I'm, very lucky, where I'm at. I'm sort of further away from it, and we didn't get any evacuation orders. So, just really grateful and feeling very lucky. But if you're somebody who needs to take your mind off of what's going on in your life in the world right now, Superman the movie 1978 is what the doctor ordered. So I highly recommend it. If you'd like me to review the other Superman movies, if there's other stuff, like anytime You guys, if you guys disagree with me, if there's stuff I've missed, I'm open to it. Please comment below. I do want to thank you all for, man, the views on the 3 Exorcist films, particularly Exorcist 2. I've never gotten that many views on that derided a film, on a film that just isn't, I think, as well known. I have no idea that there were other people out there that felt the same as I did. I really appreciate the views. I really appreciate the shares and the feedback on all of those. It was a lot of fun. It's like, you guys know, I love movies so much. And so if there's anything that I'm missing, anything you think I should review, anything that's addendum to any of these movies I've talked about, let me know, because I'm game. And in the meantime, be good to each other, stay safe, stay hopeful, and I'll see you in the next one.